Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, I want to cover in a little bit more of an organized fashion some of the things that I discussed in yesterday's live. I did get some people reaching out to let me know they definitely prefer and it's easier to consume the things that I put across in this format, and that's definitely understandable as well. And I hope to try to keep doing these videos in this format as much as possible to ensure that everything I can get across comes across easier. It was an hour and a half yesterday, and while it was very cathartic, we definitely get off track on the lives and things like that. So let's get straight into it first and foremost. We want to talk about Ten Hag. I want to go through that in more specificity about the situation that he's in presently, the plan, and what might happen. I want to talk about injuries in the left back, and then I want to break down and look at some of the players that we've actually sold or put out on loan that we have buybacks or other situations around to see how they're doing. This was suggested to me by somebody in our community. I don't think there's enough for a whole video as of yet, but something worth covering that I think would be interesting, or maybe not that interesting once we actually look into it. But let's start with the present, okay? At present, United unfortunately sit 13th in the table in 7th, okay? And after a very difficult game against Tottenham, after the weekend, it would be conceivable when you look at goal difference, if United do not perform well and lose, that they could quite easily drop down into 15th or so. The underlying stats, while they had been making some progress, look really poor after the game against Tottenham, with United creating very little in that game. What was once maybe 5th or 6th in creating chances and XG has already dropped to 9th. And in terms of expected goals against, United are 4th from the bottom. They've also lost as many games as practically anybody else. There's only 3 more teams that have lost more. Obviously, it's not been ideal. Now, once again, that's always the downside when you're trying to look at a club early on in the season and assess progress and things like that. Things can look like progress, and it can change in one game, and things can look bad, and it can change in one game to looking a lot better. But unfortunately, it went in the negative direction for us, where anything that looked like progress, now you look at the stats and suddenly we look worse than last year. That's how bad the Tottenham game was, for what it's worth. But it's also, when you're dealing with, of course, a small number of games, individual games become hugely significant, more so than they would be over the course of the whole season. So at the present, in the past, when I did this video and talked about Ten Hag's situation during the prior international break, I said they wanted to get to this international break and see how we were doing. Right now, as it were, undoubtedly, you would not look at the club and say that we've progressed this season. There are some things that have improved, but there's a lot of things that may even be worse. And when you factor in the amount of money spent and the players that are there, as of yet, we're really not seeing anything that would consistently give us an indication of progress. So where does that leave Mr. Ten Hag? Where does it leave him? What is his situation? And what is he being measured on? Through this season, they wanted to give him the whole year. That's what they wanted going into it. They wanted to give him every tool and every opportunity to get through the whole year. They had targets that they wanted him to reach. They had targets from a position standpoint, but also blended with how well are we implementing the foundations? How well are we implementing our game model? How well are we putting these things into place? Are you getting along with the players? Is the dressing room mood better? Is the team becoming more aligned? Is there, and this is a factor that the players get judged on for sure, but also the manager, because it's a part of certainly their job and what the best managers are good at. Are you fostering a winning attitude in the dressing room, a drive, a motivation, a win or die attitude in there? Because that is something that takes time to build, and it is something that has been sorely missing from United. Those are all the things they want to see in there. And they have measures for these, and it's not always so simple as just looking at the table, and they've got their own way of looking at it. Games like Liverpool, games like 20, and games like Tottenham have bigger implications and raise huge alarm bells for them, because yeah, you've got to, there's a lot of players and people who didn't put the work in, but at the same time, the manager is going to be ultimately judged for whether he's able to do that. When you have questions like, people will say, okay, well, Diogo Dalot didn't track back, didn't run back. Totally true. What did you do about it? If you want to complain that, for example, that Marcus Rashford doesn't press, if you think that's the case, now I don't agree that that's the case, but if you say Marcus Rashford doesn't press, he doesn't track back, okay, but he still plays every single game. Those are the things that happen where you can put the blame on players and you can say they're doing something wrong, but ultimately Ten Hag will be judged on how he deals with those things. And ultimately that's what they want to see from him. If Rashford's not tracking back, but you're starting him every game, then there's either two options. Either Ten Hag doesn't see it, or he wants him to do exactly what he's doing, for example. And so this is where Ten Hag will be measured. This is what he will be looked at on. Is he addressing the problems that are showing up, even if there's plenty of blame to go around? Is he dealing with them? Is he improving them? So in answer to that, so far, they're not feeling great about it. And they feel that some of the things that have occurred have gone so badly, and some of the, they expected better as of now. And they didn't expect to see these monumental, disastrous type games that are truly very rare. Because bear in mind, we didn't see a game like that, Tottenham, under Jose or Oli until the day they were sacked. You didn't see it. We've had 10 of them under Ten Hag. We've had, maybe 10 is an exaggeration, but we've seen it. We've seen Liverpool, Bournemouth at home, Palace away, a game there was one against Fulham we saw in the first season after the Liverpool 7-0, a few games like that. And this year already, I think we've seen 2 games like that between Liverpool and Tottenham. We didn't see games that bad, that easy, under many different managers until the very end when they were done. And that was sort of the marker that they were finished. We've seen it a lot under Ten Hag, actually. But the question is, can you fix it? And that's where the real disappointment from these games come, is that somehow that is still happening. That those were the games that are inexcusable. You can lose games and all of that, but you cannot have that bad a performance. You cannot have that bad a game. You cannot have that much of a disaster. And if so, you need instantly things to turn around and get better, and you need a change. There was an example given one time, that there was a game like this under Solskjaer, where in his second season, we lost to Tottenham like 5-1 or 6-1 right before an international break. The team was totally different when we came back. Different starters. There was actual consequence for it, and we ended up going on and having a pretty good season under Solskjaer standards there and where we were at that point in time. Those are the types of things. If Diogo Dalot doesn't track back, why didn't you sub him off instantly for doing something like that? Is he going to start against Porto, or will you start somebody else there? Even if you don't have the options, you have to be able to dole out consequences to change the actions of players, and you're still responsible for that as the manager. So the view in general is that it hasn't been good, and that some of these things that have happened are completely unacceptable. And that has them worried that, one, we're already drifting far away from the targets, and two, that we are already seeing problems that they did not want to see through this season that are not being rectified, that are not being fixed. Things that really should be snuffed out a lot earlier that are not being snuffed out and that are continuing. And that overall, one of the things they did say the person I speak with and a couple of people that I speak with understood as well, is that there's a lack of, they're not particularly impressed in the game plan being so different, having so much variance in it, that it changes so much from game to game, because the biggest priority this year was to lay a strong and solid and consistent foundation and platform in which to build upon for all levels of the club. And that doesn't work when it's changing game to game. So those are the things that they are concerned about. And they wanted to address it and look at it. Again, they wanted to give them the season, and they wanted to do sort of a review towards the end of the calendar year and say, okay, where are we at? Is it, are we kind of on our way? Because they have a couple of different decisions to make. Are we improving this season? Is it enough that we're confident Ten Hag is our guy? Or are we already starting to say, yeah, we might need to replace him? But then the other question is it at least good enough that we will progress through this season and we can make that call at the end, and we can start looking at replacements, and we can replace them at the end of the season? Well, they wanted to make those calls before January. They wanted to make those calls around the end of the year to kind of know what their long-term plan is, so that they're not in some sort of chaos or haphazard fashion, and really start laying things out. Because again, it's a couple of different decisions. Is Ten Hag the guy for the long term? Are we not sure, but it's okay. We'll see out this season, because unfortunately, as I've said before, this is a season of progress. It isn't a season of huge expectations. That doesn't mean it's a throwaway, but it does mean that there's a little bit of a different idea of what would be success this year. So they have that decision to make, or that they wanted to make. Is Ten Hag doing well enough that we're still considering we could keep him at the end of the year and then give him a new 3-year deal towards that Project 150, where he's going into that winning time? Or is it good enough for this season, but we're going to replace at the end of the year? Or is it so bad that we need to make a change now? Well, the problem is that so far it's been so bad with some of the things that have occurred that it's moving to where they feel they need to discuss that sooner, right? And it will be discussed in the international break. And so the next couple of games it's not like you win and it's all good and you lose and it's all bad, because it's a very wide range of decisions and multiple decisions that have to be made, not just the one, and multiple different scenarios. And it's all just adding context to the pile. Because then there's also the question of, if we did make a change, is it going to actually get better this year? Or is it better to stick it out and prove a point anyway, right? We don't know. And the fact is they haven't made that decision. And as such, even if they're considering it, you understand, like they might be considering again, all right, is it bad enough that we're going to have to replace during this break? Is it bad enough? Is it okay where we could keep it going and then to the end of the year, but we're going to start looking at the long term anyway? Or is it all okay? Well, it's not all okay. We can say that. So it's falling into those two categories right now. But that decision hasn't been made, and the next couple of games are going to influence that, just because it's more evidence. It's just more evidence in one way or another of how it goes. If they go really poorly, then yeah, they might take the view, okay, it's so bad we have to do something now, or we will just not make any progress this season. There's no foundations being laid, and it's a disaster, okay? So it's all kind of up in the air in that way. It's all kind of not decided, and they're going to have these conversations and figure it out. So it isn't decided. They didn't really want to be addressing it already. And at the same time, they would really prefer if it was going well enough that there was a steady foundation and progress being laid, which is not all on the pitch, that allowed them to at least make it through this season with a good progress, good growth for a lot of players, and then see, in the long term what to do. In terms of replacement, that is a problem on this, and that is something that should be discussed. And I answered a lot of questions yesterday, and a lot of stuff got picked up, in aggregation, and I think it was some in context, some out of context, but it's all within the context of the discussion. Because the view is as well, there's always succession planning. There's always contingency planning with any competent structure, and they have been doing it, and they are doing it. That doesn't mean they're talking to, to managers and things like that, because they're not. What it does mean, now agents and people are contacting them all the time, but they always have succession plans, and they always have contingency plans, and always have what if, right? And part of the situation here, as they see it, and as I understand it, is that there's a clear lack of the managers that they would want, um, that they could get into midseason kind of regardless. Managers that I know are highly admired by everybody, including the people in charge, that would be looked at as we want to assess them more and see, but we could see how those could be long-term managers. People like Javi Alonso, people like, McKenna, people like Amarim, people like, people like that. Those are some of the names that are really well liked and are viewed as potential long-term manager candidates that they've already looked at before, that they know a lot about, and that they would consider. But none of those are really going to be available now, and they want to see more of them. There's others, people like Areola at Bournemouth, that could be great manager options if he continues doing a good job at Bournemouth. But he's, again, not likely somebody going to leave now. And then you've got, all right, well, then what's available? Thomas Tuchel, okay, well, he turned us down in summer, and we're not totally sure about the job. Does he want the job? Does he really want it? Is he our right guy for the next 3 years, or are we trying to just salvage the season? Well, Dan Ashworth wasn't there, so we don't know his opinion on Thomas Tuchel. We don't know where he's at on Thomas Tuchel. Then you have names like Southgate. Well, if they all really wanted Southgate so badly, then they could just hire him, right? It would be very easy for them to let go of Ten Hag and hire him already if they really wanted Southgate. Now, David Ornstein said he wasn't on top of the list, that he wasn't really someone they would go for. Laurie Whitwell has steered away from him. Mike Keegan at the Daily Mail, who's been a really good source during the whole process with Ineos and everything, did an article in July that said even if things went disastrously bad, they would not turn to Southgate. And they had to sack Ten Hag early in the season. They would not turn to Southgate. And I think this was after Southgate left the English team. So there's a lot of people, including myself, and it's very mixed because you get a lot of people saying that Southgate is well admired by United too. But there's a lot of people, including myself, who kind of have gotten to understanding that they really wouldn't want to do that. Graham Potter, someone I've talked to and looked at in the past. Again, he's been available. They could have hired him. They didn't. And I don't think they want to at this point in time from what I'm hearing. There's other names and people. Thomas Frank, they might be interested in him in a general sense, but right now not an option. So there's not a ton of options where you sit there and say, oh yeah, we know our for sure long-term manager is here. We could just go get him right now. That's not really the case. That's not really how it is, right? And that's not really available. So that has to factor into the conversation too. And that's why I've said before that, Van Nistelrooy would very likely be someone that they would just go with him for the rest of the season if something were to happen. But then you have to weigh that up. Is that going to be better than keeping Ten Hag? Could we keep him and use it as a point, like the manager's staying no matter what, so let's get everybody moving, but maybe we have to overstep a little bit more and step in and say, okay, well, you want to pin it on players not doing this or players not doing that, then do something about it. Then drop Diogo Dalot for a game, Then, okay, well, what are you asking for that's not happening? Where are the consequences for it? How are you correcting that? And how are you creating this winning atmosphere? Maybe they will decide they've got to step in more because they haven't been. That's one important thing. They have not stepped in at all tactically, on setup, on all of those things. They have not done that. And that has happened to other managers at United, but they have not done that. And so maybe they'll decide that. There's a lot of things that could be considered here, but I think the replacement aspect is there's people they really like for the long term that are people that they want to look at and say, okay, yeah, that could be a candidate for the long term, but I don't think any of them are available right now, are people that they can get right now. And I don't think it's that easy to get them. So sure, if they had to make a change, the more likely name would be Thomas Tuchel because they already made an offer for him and he turned it down. But so that we know that they liked him, but that was before Dan Ashworth, and we just don't know for sure that that is going to change. That he wanted a year off, that he's going to come and join 3 months later. We don't know that, right? So it makes for a very complex situation with a lot of variables in this, and I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed longer, just because of all the variables that are included in this. I have my qualms with some of the way of thinking about it, My thing all along was that with the new owners coming in, replacing everybody, they should have started fresh, even regardless of Ten Hag. It wasn't about, I said last year, it shouldn't have been about performance, not performance, this, not that. Is he exactly the guy you want? And the answer was obviously no, but they stuck with it anyway. He was not exactly the guy that they wanted. And I think that they made mistakes in how they went about it, kind of questioning it. To do that. And I think that they're definitely to blame a bit for this too, this situation, no doubt about it. But then the question becomes right now, is the exact guy you want attainable? Well, if not, then you have to really decide, is it going to get better, or can we do more to improve upon the situation as it were right now and get the exact thing we want later? Because we can't get it now. I don't know the answer to that, and nobody does as of yet. But those discussions will happen during this international break to decide on the right course of action. And the next couple of games will be evidence to that as to whether it's so bad that it's an unsalvageable situation or what. They'll just add to the evidence, add to the situation, because it's these huge collapses that are really a problem. For sure, they are really a problem. If you had games like Palace, which I think had good and bad, but that continued and it got a little better each game, you can afford to drop points and lose and draw and things like that, but you cannot have these huge collapses, and you cannot have games like 20, which was just as bad in a different way. So a lot is to be considered there, but hopefully that kind of clears it up a bit. Yeah. In terms of injuries, I mentioned when Lenny Yoro got injured originally, it was looking like it was like 6 to 12 weeks with that injury in general, and it was probably going to be closer to 12 weeks, but they delayed a little bit on the surgery, right? Because he was sticking with the team. And I think recently I said it'll probably be not the next international break, but the following one, the one in November. And I think that that is correct, that he will be back after that. Luke Shaw, he was supposed to be back after the last international break. I said, I don't know about that one. Well, again, it might be by the next international break. And so there's been a big priority placed on, I've said a few times now, but I just want to repeat it, on a left back, and that the left back situation is a bad one. Tyrell Malacia might come back into the team by then, but we also still don't know what level of fitness he's really going to have and what level he'll be able to play after this long being out. So left back is a situation. Anthony Robinson continues to be someone looked at. Fulham are wrong button. Sorry. Fulham are, third in the league defensively. Can you believe that? Margot Silva's done a really good job there. Third in the league defensively in expected goals against. Anthony Robinson, a key part of that. A very strong defending fullback. He also has 2 assists on the year. So he's continuing his recent form of being a really, really top-class fullback. I think he'd be a good choice. I think he'd be expensive. I think it'd be hard to get out of there. But, that's where also the consideration has to come in. Where are we at by January? What have we done with the manager? What have we done on all of this? And those were all the decisions they wanted to make in December, was to decide fully on investing in January. So they haven't totally decided on it, but certainly it's looking like a priority. But they need to kind of make these other decisions to decide, do we want to spend in January? Can we spend in January? How much can we spend? Is it going to be worth it? Is it attainable? Do we need to look somewhere else? Do we need to just do a loan and figure it out? So those considerations still have to be answered on the basis of as well of where the club is at. If things are turn around one way or another, whether Ten Hag stays, whether Ten Hag goes, if things turn around a bit and we're progressing through European competition, because that's big. We can't lose another game, from Europa. And we're in the hunt for Champions League in the league, and we're still in the League Cup and FA Cup, and we're progressing. Well, then they might look at January and say, yeah, if we buy someone here that will help us spur things along, it's going to ensure we could compete in these levels and get back into Champions League. It'll be worth the money. But they have to make that decision. Much like, say, Liverpool will be looking at January, and now apparently they want Braithwaite in January, and I think that makes sense for them because they're looking and saying, hey, there's an opportunity to win the league here. With Rodri out for City, we're top of the league, we're doing well. We're going to go for it. We didn't get a lot of players for slot this summer. Let's do it in January because we could win the league. Same story. There has to be a reason. When you're buying in January, it's usually because you feel it's going to help you accomplish a means that you're on the way to getting. And that's what we need. So we will find that out. Finally, on the buybacks, wanted to cover that, talk about the players that are out there, because United moved on 5 players with buybacks and loans, and I hope I'm not missing somebody here. But I wanted to see kind of their progress and where they're at, because their sell-on clauses and buybacks and these situations could be interesting in the future. We start with young Facundo Pellistri, who moved to the Greek side, Panathinaikos. And as of yet, let's see, he got a goal in a winning game against, a winning goal in a qualifying round for the UEFA Conference League. Not a winning goal, but a goal in a winning game in 82 minutes there. He's started, it looks like, 1, 2, 3 matches for them in their league. Has 1 assist coming off of the bench. His most recent appearance was as a substitute. So, not making his way in. Not a ton of evidence as of yet, but making his way into the team with a goal and an assist in, if you don't count our minutes, in 360 minutes or so. So that not that bad. That's a decent start. Hannibal Mejbri has joined Burnley, of course. They, I don't know what position they actually sit in, but he's yet to have a goal and assist in the league. He has played a lot. He is playing every game and working on more minutes and starting, and he's managed to only get yellows in his first 2 games and not since. So maybe that's progress for Hannibal. Not tearing up any trees as of yet. But I think Burnley are doing pretty well. I mean, 3 wins and 2 draws. They lost in the cup to Wolves, but that's not bad. Yet to lose a game. So, you want to see more if he's been playing as more of an attacking midfielder in terms of creating goals. These are pretty low-scoring affairs here. But he's playing, and so good for him, and hopefully he can continue to progress there. That is not the right Alvaro Fernandez. I will come back to that. What happened here? This doesn't look right at all. I had the wrong person. All right, Willy Kambuala. He played 1 game for Villarreal. 90 minutes, won the game, and he's not been in the squad since. Now, he's a young player, so it may just be that simple. Villarreal are in 3rd in La Liga this year, doing quite well. He's not playing, so it may just be that it's a bit too tough for him at the moment. It doesn't say anything about an injury. I struggle to find news on them. It's such a small club. But they're doing well in La Liga. They're 3rd, and he is not at this moment in time really playing, but he did play in 1 start and win. He's not in the squad. Don't know the reasons for that, but let me just find the right person here. But yeah, I don't know the reason for that, I really don't. I'll want to look into that more, because, good player, and maybe it is just he's too young, and he's just going to keep training, and they're in a strong league position, so they want to just keep working it out, and keep progressing. So yeah, let's go back to the correct Alvaro Fernandez, Alvaro Carreras, who we sent on loan, and then they purchased him, and I think we got a sell on and buyback here. He still appears to be doing pretty well. He's playing a lot of minutes. He's like the nailed-on starter, 90 minutes per game for them. A lot of wins, no assists and goals, but he's a defender, so it is what it is. A lot of wins. They're a good team. I think they're in 3rd in the Portuguese league right now. So he seems to be doing pretty well. They won their first game against Red Star, and they will be playing their second one today. So interesting, in the Champions League. So he seems to be performing. Benfica fans were extremely happy with him as a player, and surely his value is going up. And it seems like they are really, really happy with him. And then the only other player I'm sad to mention here a little bit, and this is not a gotcha on anyone or anything, is I wasn't sharing it, was I? When I went to Alvaro. Yeah, anyways, he's played every single game, and he's doing quite well for Portugal Champions League. And the only other player I wanted to share here, was Jadon Sancho. We don't have a buyback. He'll basically end up being purchased by Chelsea should they finish above 13th, which certainly looks like it, as they're doing quite well. 3 assists in 3 games. He came on as a substitute, I believe. Started. Did not play. They're rotating a lot in the squad, which you can imagine with such a huge squad. But seems to be doing well for Chelsea. 3 games, 3 wins for him there. So all the best to him. That's fine. Different. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. We don't have a buyback or anything there, but obviously with Chelsea doing quite well, it's very likely that that will turn into income and a purchase. And when that is triggered, ideally, then we won't be losing money on it because the obligation will be triggered a bit later when his amortization is lower and all of that. Okay, that's what I wanted to cover in this video and put into a different format from the live. So I hope you found this interesting. We'll be doing a pre-match thing tomorrow and a few other things, and Friday, a bunch of stuff as well. So lots to do. And then over the break, I'm expecting to do some collaborations with some other people that you know. So that should be fun as well. Okay, thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on, and I will see you in the next video.